He fights with missiles. He's 5'2" and he's 6'4". He fights with missiles and with spears. He's all of 31 and he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years. He's a Catholic. What is it, Charlie? Absolutely. What is it, Charlie?
This reporter, Sam Melton, White Eagle, I'm back with you. We have another Just Say No's news update. Today we want to focus
Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine.
Good evening. Sam Melton here, White Eagle. I've got another special news documentary tonight for you on JSN News. I think you're going to find this highly enlightening, and I think you're going to find my guest, this gentleman, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Aguilara. He's a Green Beret, Special Forces, a West Point graduate, and a very amazing fellow, in my opinion. He's a warrior who has experienced many, many conflicts. You'll hear more about him when we start. He's an officer and a gentleman. He's an amazing humanitarian. He's a Christian scholar and a true officer and upholder of the Constitution of the United States. We had a small conversation after his lecture. I filmed his lecture. I'll probably put on more about Tony's talks later, as he is looking at the crimes being done by the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, and the Israeli government. It is vicious, cruel. As I've said before, it's breaking all humanitarian rules and humanitarian moral behavior. It is throwing the Geneva Convention in the trash and American constitutional law. And I talked to Tony, and I appreciate that. I appreciate his service, as I told him. And I appreciate his service in protecting our Constitution of this country. He knows, as I know, many of our friends and fellow warriors have died laying flags on their coffins. And we owe them this respect to uphold the Constitution of the United States and constitutional law, which we have all sworn an oath to. So I just want to move on.
All right, so you are watching and listening to the Electronic Intifada. I am John Elmer. This is the Resistance Report for day 874 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Today, we are going to look at the U.S. military buildup in the area that it calls Central Command, aimed at Iran. It's gunboat diplomacy, old school gunboat diplomacy aimed at Iran. I am reporting this on Thursday, the 26th of February. Of course, things are moving very quickly. But let's start with the maps to give you, this is what the old story of any country that the Americans attack. The country happens to be surrounded by U.S. military bases, which you can see on this map running all through the area. Dozens of bases, part of the 800 U.S. permanent bases all around the world. They also have shared airfields that don't count as permanent bases that are being used for this preparation. But you can see the air bases are the darker green, and the more fixed bases and naval bases are the lighter green on here. And you can see that they have shown the USS Abraham Lincoln. The aircraft carrier is off the coast of Oman. And as of today, the USS Ford is pushing towards the Eastern Mediterranean. It just left dock in Greece. So today, also in Geneva, was the third round of talks, and these talks are, again, they're led by Kushner and Witkoff. They're not, they don't have a bunch of experts in tow, and the Iranians are experts on this file. They've been negotiating on this file for decades, and they send serious negotiators to meet with Kushner and Witkoff, who are real estate guys who don't have any background history on this issue. They're not surrounded by people who do. And so we saw today in Geneva, Kushner and Witkoff leave the negotiations to go and do their Ukraine negotiations. And that's the same thing as the Board of Peace. When they're at the Board of Peace, Kushner and Witkoff, they came out and did interviews about the attack on Iran. So they've got these balls in the air, juggling them, and have no expertise to do this. So that's the first map. Let's take a look at the second map, which will show you how the military buildup has taken place, largely from the continental United States over the Atlantic Ocean into bases in Europe, in Western Europe, in the UK, in Germany, Spain, Italy, and then further over to Greece and Cyprus. There you can see, and then numerous major bases in the Middle East, closer to Iran, that we saw on the previous map. There's more than 40,000 U.S. troops permanently stationed in the CENTCOM area, and the entire area of the U.S. Central Command is under missile range of the Iranian of the IRGC missile program. So that is something just important to put on the table, because we're going to focus mostly on the American buildup here. The main focus of the nuclear talks is that the U.S. has a maximalist position, a position that even if they took the most minimum of the U.S. position, it's greater than the maximum position that Iran is willing to accept. So essentially, the U.S. is looking for surrender from the Iranians, surrender of sovereignty, surrender of their military capacity, surrender of their foreign policy. And so these talks don't seem to have the road to avoid war built into them. So we'll have to follow them closely. And of course, Trump is just so erratic that there's nothing like even saying that there's negotiations happening right now on a normal circumstance would mean that the war will not start. But we know from the last round of negotiations, that Israel struck Iran before the major meeting that was set with the Americans. We know the Israelis struck Qatar when as soon as the Hamas delegation in Qatar was given the ceasefire proposal. There was an assassination attempt on them during those times. So these negotiations, I don't think it's worth tons of our time delving into the negotiations, because Trump doesn't follow that kind of playbook. It's not linear for him. He can decide at any given moment. And he seems to have enough people in the U.S. military going along with this, although we know that there's dissenting voices as well, because the possibility of this kind of a war spiraling out of control is real. And what we've seen from the Iranians, there's been 3 operations by the Iranians responding to attacks on them. True Promise 1 was in April 2024. True Promise number 2 was October 2024. And those were seen as demonstrations. They were an attempt to show the capacity that the Iranians have to strike without sparking a war. True Promise 3 was the 12-day war. And in that time, in those 12 days, Iran struck Israel in downtown Israel, in downtown Tel Aviv. It struck military bases all over the country. And again, they call that demonstrative. And this week, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he basically called the Americans bluff when he addressed Trump's what Trump called his big, beautiful armada. Khamenei said, the Americans constantly say that they've sent a warship toward Iran. Of course, a warship is a dangerous piece of military hardware. However, more dangerous than that warship is the weapon that can send that warship to the bottom of the sea. Iran wrote to the United Nations that if U.S. aggression happens, all bases, facilities, and assets of the aggressor in the region will be considered legitimate targets under self-defense of Article 51 of the UN Charter. And for their part, the Iranians are also carrying out military exercises in the islands around the Strait of Hormuz, through which about 20% of the world's oil and natural gas flow. So many options on the table for the Iranians to respond. And we're going to see that buildup happen here. If we look at number 3 here, this is flight tracker data. And you're going to see at the bottom the time scale. So we're watching this go day by day over the course of the last week. And you can see this graphic that we're looking on the screen shows U.S. military deckled planes flying all over flying across the world, really, the way that we're looking at it. And the way that it is that their transponders go off when they're in the middle of the ocean. So it looks a little bit broken up here, but you can imagine that each of those flights are continuing across the Atlantic. They just go dark for long periods of time. It's also tanker traffic for the most part that's being watched, and strategic lift. The fighter jets fly dark, but when there's tankers flying, you know that they're flying with a squadron of fighter jets as well. So this is just a really remarkable way that Flight Radar 24 showed us that this week. We can look at the next one. It shows just a single day. And this is the movement of more than 150 fighter aircraft. We're now over 200. These numbers are going up every day because it's been a 6-week buildup. The buildup has intensified over the last week or 10 days, and the numbers have increased pretty drastically. And you can see just the amount of activity. Again, the Atlantic Ocean, these flights are continuing over the Atlantic Ocean, which would make for a better visual, but they're limited by the transponder access over the ocean and the fact that these planes fly in ghost mode. We can look at the next map. It will show us a 3D version of what these maps look like. Number 5 here. You can see, again, just the lines. And we talk in metaphors a lot, like an air bridge. We talked about that throughout the war in Gaza, where there was an air bridge to Israel from the United States to support the genocide in Gaza. But when you look at the way that this is graphed, you can see those purple and pink lines flying across the ocean, setting up, going into Europe, where they refuel, and then they go from those bases down into the bases in the Middle East, which you can see perfectly there across the screen as a literal air bridge. And that is how these military assets are being put into place. The largest military buildup that we have seen since before the war in Iraq in 2003. So we've also never seen this level of buildup before without there being a war. We've also never had Trump before, so that might not hold. But in any other time, if you see this much military buildup, you can expect a war to follow. If we look on the next screen, we can see what happens here when these planes land. This is Muwafaq al-Salti base in Jordan. This has become a key strategic hub for the war. It's also in central Jordan, right, basically acts as a shield for Israel. Muwafaq al-Salti was a Jordanian pilot who was killed in battle against the Israelis in 1966. So to see this airfield being used today by the Americans and the Israelis to prepare for this war has a bit of history to it. We're looking here on the from satellite images. These came from Reuters and the New York Times, showing 66 plus warplanes, 3 times the number that are normally stationed at this base. And over the last, over a 5-day period last week, there was 68 heavy lift, like the largest cargo planes on Earth, taking supplies into this base. And so we've seen that. This is a satellite image. We can see the next one. We can see it up closer, the next couple. And you can see the F-35s there on the base in Jordan. This base has now been overflowing with assets. And so the Americans are moving to other bases in Jordan, multiple other bases in Jordan. There again, you see the F-35s. And these are only the ones that are out on the runway. There's also hardened shelters in these air bases that would conceal other planes, presumably Jordanian planes, but there's many hardened covers that would cover up more planes. So we don't have the full picture of the like the Americans don't admit to these numbers. These are open source satellite imagery and flight tracking data that is putting all of this together. And one more you can see here, number 8. Yeah, these are the MQ-9 Reaper drones. These are the drones that the Yemenis dropped out of the sky by the dozens in their battle in the Red Sea. They're also positioned in Jordan here at that same airbase. And if we look at the next slide, this is an interesting one. This is Ben Gurion Airport hosting here American Air Force refueling tanker planes. There was also C-17s parked at Ben Gurion. So the Israelis using a civilian airport for military purposes, which is, of course, something that they always do, but are the first to accuse others of doing. We know that Israel's deeply involved in this attack plan. There was a report yesterday from the State Department leaks saying that they want the Israelis to attack first. That's what happened in the 12-day war. And then Trump can join the war because the war is not popular in the United States. So he's kind of juggling a few things that might make sense for the Israelis to carry out this the early stages of this battle. In any case, the point is it is a United States and Israeli operation through and through. We saw over the last couple days US F-22s fly from the UK to Ovda air base in the Negev, which is being set up as a U.S. hub inside Israel. The F-22 stealth fighter jets were reported. They were actually reported through CENTCOM in Israeli media. They made it around the censor. They say on Khan, the state broadcaster, a source in the U.S. Central Command confirmed to us this evening that 12 F-22 fighter jets landed this afternoon at one of the air bases in the south of the country as part of the U.S. regional deployment in the Middle East. These are the most advanced fighter jets in the world, which only the Americans have, and among other things, are supposed to penetrate enemy territory and open up air defense systems and neutralize radars. It is possible that the American choice to deploy F-22 squadron in Israel stems from the fact that Israel is prepared to deal with the missile attacks based on past experience in the last campaign. And also for Netanyahu's part, he's never seen a war that he doesn't want the U.S. to fight on Israel's behalf. A week ago, Sunday, he spoke on his terms for the war. Netanyahu is eager for the United States. This is from the Washington Post. Netanyahu is eager for the United States to launch a major attack on Iran. And in a speech on Sunday, he put forward his own conditions for any U.S. agreement with Tehran. Any deal must ban all enrichment of uranium uranium and dismantle the equipment and infrastructure that allows you to enrich it in the first place, Netanyahu told the annual conference of the presidents of major American Jewish organizations. It should also require that all enriched uranium leave Iran and restrict its ballistic missile program and impose sustained inspections on the civilian nuclear program. This has obviously been a dream of Netanyahu's for the last 25 years. And as I said, he's never met a war in the Middle East that he does not want the United States to fight for Israel. But just as a note of reminder from the 12-day war, that war rocked Israel, and the United States used a significant portion of its air defense systems, particularly the terminal high altitude aerial defense interceptors. They used 1/4 of their entire inventory in that 12-day war. The Israelis, in the first days after the war, the tax authority talked about multiple billions of dollars in damage that happened in that 12-day period, sustained damage that the highest ever recorded in Israeli history in a period of time like that. The tax authority director said that these challenges are a magnitude we've never faced in the history of Israel. So that was only for the 12-day war. And Wall Street Journal reports upwards in some days of $200 million in air defense assets used during that battle. So a prolonged war between Iran and Israel and the United States puts all of the United States assets in the region in range, and it puts Israel in the place that we saw it last summer during that 12-day war, where they didn't want that war to continue at all. And Israeli newspapers are talking about hysteria within Israel of traumatized people from that war. We take a look at the next slide because those were aerial assets brought over, but of course we also have the naval assets, and this is the USS Abraham Lincoln. It is off the coast of Oman in the Arabian Sea. It's about 700 kilometers off the coast to get it out of range of anti-ship ballistic missiles and anti-ship cruise missiles. We saw that with the Yemen war as well. So these, the aircraft carrier itself, it holds about 90 aircraft, F-18s, F-35s, bunch of helicopters, and a bunch of electronic warfare planes. It's got a crew of 5,600 on the ship and in the air crew. So they're bringing over on these ships numbers that are similar to the numbers of planes that are being brought from continental US and from Europe. And at this point now, it's over 200 fighter jets that we know of that have been deployed to the region, and more than 300 cargo loads of cargo plane loads have landed as well. And then on top of that, you have the entire Israeli Air Force as well, which virtually doubles this this military buildup. But you can see the escort ships that go alongside the Lincoln. Those are guided missile destroyers. So those are also air defense. They are air defense for the carrier, but they also integrate into Israel's, which is also America's, missile defense array. So these ships are all a part of that as well. We can look at the next one is the USS Ford. USS Ford was just in Venezuela. They were part of the operation to kidnap Maduro from Venezuela and to oversee the attacking of random boats that are called drug boats, but we have no evidence of any of that given so far. This ship, the Ford, it was in Europe for its deployment. The Trump administration called it back from Europe to carry out the Venezuela operation, which extended its time. And when it was in Venezuela, off the coast of Venezuela, it was their time at sea was extended again, and had them sail back across the Atlantic. And we saw it pass through the Straits of Gibraltar and this is into the Mediterranean Sea on Friday. And again, this is a $13 billion aircraft carrier, 4,500 sailors. It's been at sea since the 24th of June, 2025, far beyond the normal 6-month deployments. And it carries as well F-18s, F-35s, electronic warfare planes as well. And it has 5 escort ships that you see here. So a significant naval force as well. And just a note on the USS Ford, it has had serious problems with its toilet systems that have been overflowing, and that has been a consistent something consistent with this carrier since at least March of last year. So the sailors themselves are talking to American media about being, stretched to their limits, wanting to quit being in the Navy because of these assignments, and trying to get their toilets fixed. So they have a bit of a side story going on with the USS Ford. The Ford pushed off from Greece today, heading to further east to the Mediterranean, which will put these ships well within range of Hezbollah's anti-ship missiles should this war become a regional war. We can see in these next few slides how we knew that the aircraft carrier, which flies dark, it flies in what's called ghost mode, sails in ghost mode. But you have here, this is a bird photographer on the Strait of Gibraltar who saw the USS Ford enter in and pass through the Straits of Gibraltar, which you're seeing there. You can see Quetta and Morocco in the background there, and the helicopter flying over it. That's a photograph by David Parody. We can see another one as well here, again with the background. Massive ship. And so this research is all being done through various methods, through flight tracking, through photographers who happen to see these ships. The footage that I showed you of the military assets at Ben Gurion Airport was taken out the window of a plane that someone saw. So putting together all of this information is remarkable, and it's something that is only could have been done in recent years with the development of flight tracking and whatnot. We got another one slide here from up closer. You can see the helicopters, and you can see it's bristled right out. That's all the fighter jets that are on the deck there. There's like 75 odd that are ready to be deployed at any moment. So again, these ships are doubling what's already doubling the carrier presence that was already there. And that's a look at one of the escort ships, the guided missile destroyers. So interesting to mix these two, the flight tracking radar and just humans taking pictures. So let's take a look at number 16. You can see the assets spread out here. These are the number of assets that have been deployed so far. Again, the numbers are increasing. You see the numbers of fighter jets, more than 200. That shows the ships on the bottom there that you're seeing. Those are Tomahawk cruise missiles that were used in the 12-day war to attack Iranian nuclear sites, but you could see what their loadout is on those destroyers, guided missile destroyers that carry these Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles. So really bristling with a war posture. No other way to describe that. We're going to listen to a clip here in a moment from the United States Air Force Central Command Chief of Weapons and Tactics, Major Claire Randolph, who talks about the complexity of maintaining operational security during Operation Midnight Hammer, where she was weapons and tactics officer during that 12-day war. A few weeks ago, she gave this presentation to the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies that had a panel of Americans that were involved in the Midnight Hammer operation in June of last year to target Iranian nuclear sites. And she talks about some of the challenges of these buildups and executing the war plan. Let's listen to that, number 17.
I think a couple of critical challenges specifically for this mission included the major engineering challenge, which General Armacost already talked about. Then we had the force packaging challenge, which is the job. So that wasn't an unforeseen challenge, but it is really complex to do it over effectively a day and a half period. And that's simply the job. So It's a challenge, but it's what we do. There are a couple of other challenges that sort of snuck up on us, I think. The first one I want to mention is OPSEC. We talked just now in the last panel about blue AI capabilities, but we didn't spend a lot of time talking about adversary AI capabilities or even civilian AI capabilities. I mean, you've got Twitter feeds of randos that are just studying where our airplanes go and publishing it, consolidating it. Like, if U.S. analysts did some of that, we would consider it secret or maybe even top secret. But that stuff is just allowed on the open internet. So operational security, especially when you're talking about a transnational movement with hundreds of aircraft, is really, really difficult to conceal. So OPSEC is a really big concern.
So again, operational security is a big concern because of everything that I've shown you here on this show. So she says that the gist of what she says is that if military analysts did what we have presented on this show today, it would be considered top secret, classified material. But as it is, there's people all over the world tracking this 24/7, tracking this material and putting it out there. And that is what she considered a major concern to come out of Midnight Hammer. This presentation was weeks before the buildup in Iran, so she definitely was prescient in what the challenges are for the U.S. military. And one more, just the coup de grace here is Witkoff on the sidelines of the Board of Peace meeting that we showed you in the previous interview with Mohammed Shahada, that he left the Board of Peace, went over for this interview with Fox News with Laura Trump, who just got a job on Fox News. And she interviews Witkoff about Iran. So let's listen to that. That's Stephen Witkoff you'll hear next.
We have red lines here from the U.S. How about over with Iran?
The president asked me that this morning, and I don't want to use the word frustrated. It's almost because he understands he's got plenty of alternatives. But it's curious. He's curious as to why they haven't, I don't want to use the word capitulated, but why they haven't capitulated. Why under this sort of pressure with the amount of sea power, naval power that we have over there, why they haven't come to us and said, we profess that we don't want a weapon, so here's what we're prepared to do. And yet it's hard to sort of get them to that place.
Well, there's that.
So that's the one thing about not having a diplomat be a diplomat, is he's not diplomatic. He comes out straight out and says, my boss, Trump, is frustrated that the Iranians don't look at our power and surrender and just give up. He doesn't understand resistance or sovereignty. And I think that Witkoff captured that really well. Trump expected to send this big, beautiful armada, surely the biggest armada ever, sends it over, and expects everybody to just lie down and to give up their country, their sovereignty. And he's frustrated that didn't happen and is not happening. And in fact, the Iranians are speaking stronger than they have at any point previously when they have been threatened. So we will obviously stay on top of this story. But for this week, this has been the Resistance Report for day 874 of Israel's genocide in Gaza.
Aguilar worked for UG Solutions, which provided security at sites run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He began in mid-May as a security operator, and UG Solutions says it later moved him to be an Operations Center team leader. From the beginning, he filmed sites defined by disorganization and desperation.
All the people, America, help me, please, give me one box food.
He filmed gratitude from those lucky enough to collect food, and desperate anger from those who left empty-handed. And he filmed live ammunition and non-lethal munitions, including pepper spray, used for crowd control after crowds tried to collect food. The Israel Defense Forces and GHF established 4 locations, each site secured by American contractors, with the IDF stationed on average a few hundred meters away. And on May 29th at Site 4, Aguilar filmed this video, which UG Solutions posted in full on its website.
And I hear a burst of automatic gunfire from the UG Solutions contractor in the tower facing south, and he was shooting at the crowd as they were exiting. He was shooting over their heads at their feet in the crowd. Another contractor opened up with his individually assigned weapon. And he's cheering for himself as he's shooting at unarmed civilians. Another contractor who is on the level with me on the ground by the gate, cat calls to him or instigates further to him.
I think you hit one.
Hey, man, I think you got one. The contractor that was shooting then responds with, hell yeah, boy.
In that area is where the IDF is actively conducting, and this is not an opinion that anybody can refute. This is a fact. You can look it up. The IDF is currently conducting Operation Gideon's Chariots, but located in an active combat zone.
All right, I think you've seen some lieutenant colonels talk, and I think you can very clearly see his high morality, his honor and decency, and why he is taking these steps to expose Israeli crimes against innocent civilians. I myself, Sam Melton, White Eagle, as I talked to Tony about, have spent time on the Thai-Cambodian border during Pol Pot's conflict. So I am very, very sad at this behavior that's being paid for by America. And now, as you can see with Tony, many American officers and troops and police officers are getting involved in this conflict. And the fact is, we're paying the bill for this conflict. I know some people claim Israel is buying weapons and buying military aid from us, but they're buying it with borrowed money that they have either no intention of paying back or even are capable of paying back. We give them billions of dollars in free weapons, and then they sell them on the open market. These people are not our friends. In fact, they are completely treasonous to our government, as was Biden, who called himself a Zionist, and Mr. the fascist Trump, Adolf Trump, who considers himself a Zionist and a fascist, and a total idol is Adolf Hitler himself. This man is not our president. He has committed crimes, sexual crimes against young girls. He's a disgusting individual. He's raped women. Trump has attacked our Capitol building. And he stole top secret papers, which is treasonous. This man has committed treason, sedition, and we call him president. He's not my president. This man is nothing to me but a corporate criminal, and that's exactly what he is. A criminal, and now he's guilty of so many murders. Venezuelan fishing boats that he calls drug boats with no proof. Now he's attacked Mexico. Now he's getting ready to bomb Iran and start the Third World War. America, you need to stop this insanity that is going on. And most of all, you need to stop the genocide of the Palestinian people by the Israeli government. They are an illegal and fascist and totally right-wing, cruel and inordinate and politically without any democratic values at all. You should study more about this individual. He's a wonderful, amazing individual. All right, I appreciate you joining me tonight on Just Say No, news documentary, and I hope this has been very enlightening and educational. And keep watching Just Say No News, and with the Electronic Intifada, which are not only my brethren, they are also brave and trying to give the truth to the American people. We need more truth in this country.
What I witnessed was an American contractor opening fire and shooting at an unarmed person, killing them. It's immoral, it's unethical, and it violates international humanitarian law and the Geneva Convention. It is against the law.
Taking center stage today is Anthony Aguilar, a retired U.S. Army Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel, Green Beret, and former security contractor at the highly criticized GHF, an organization backed by the U.S. and Israel. Aguilar says he resigned from his post at the GHF after witnessing shootings of Palestinians at Israeli-controlled aid sites in Gaza. He has since accused Israel of violating international law and human rights. He also says the U.S. is complicit in arming and supporting Israel as it wages war on Gaza. Anthony Aguilar, thank you for joining Center Stage.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
25-year military service. You retire and you join UG Solutions as a subcontractor.
Mm-hmm.
Your mission was to work for the GHF. When you agreed to become a subcontractor, how much did you know about what was happening in Gaza, and why did you take the job?
I knew very little of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. In fact, that foundation did not exist until February of this year. I was not familiar with either of the hiring companies, UG Solutions or GHF, but I was familiar with what was going on in Gaza, and that the dehumanization that we've all witnessed, the starvation, the hunger, the destruction, was real. That was unquestionable. What I could do about it and what part I had in that, I really didn't know. I was recruited by UG Solutions. They contacted me. And when I was approached with the opportunity for that employment, I felt that at the time, I felt that the United States was a good faith actor in this effort to feed starving people and provide relief to the human suffering in replace of the United Nations and UNRWA, under the premise that the United Nations had been compromised by Hamas and that the food was not being provided to people but was being taken. I believed that.
So you were kind of on a mercy mission to do good.
I spent 25 years of my life in service to wanting to help people and do good. And I felt that I had skills and experience that UG Solutions was looking for to operate in a very complex, dynamic environment, and that few people could do it, and that I could. And I wanted to be a part of alleviating the human suffering and feeding people that were starving. We have an obligation to safeguard the population in war. War has rules. War has ethics. War has morals. Safeguarding civilians, especially children, is a moral obligation, and I felt that I wanted to be a part of that.
Well, the UN says that more than 800 Palestinians have been killed around these 4 aid sites that you saw in Gaza. What is happening on the ground?
Well, I'll first say that that number is much higher. That number of civilians, unarmed combatants, women and children and the elderly, and people seeking food that have been killed, not dead, have been killed in and around these distribution sites surpasses multiple thousands. I know that.
How are they getting killed?
What really concerned me, and I guess what really disgusted me, is that the design of the distribution sites to force non-combatants and civilians seeking food through offensive combat zones to seek aid in an area that is dangerous, that inherently puts them in danger, was by design. The design of displacing and drawing Palestinians to food with no other option but to starve or make that journey to then be shot at was by design.
Israel says that this is a conflict zone and that's a way to explain away the shootings. Did you see a way for these aid sites to operate outside of, quote, conflict zones so that people could safely get food?
Israel's rhetoric and excuse that all of Gaza is a war zone and therefore there's no way to prevent or mitigate that is a lie. It is an absolute lie. There are areas within Gaza where combat operations are not being conducted, that sites can be established, that the population is not put in danger. There's an organization that did this very well. That organization is called the United Nations, UNRWA. 400 distribution sites throughout Gaza, community-based distribution sites providing meals, medical assessments, water, food in the places where it was needed. That's a great model. The model of establishing these distribution sites far away from anyone that is actually the population in need, to then forcing them to displace to get it, is avoidable. And it's evil. And Israel knows what they're doing. And the excuse to say that, well, everything is a combat zone is not true.
One of the other issues that's cropped up is that Israel is saying that Hamas is hoarding humanitarian aid. Is this true? And if it's not, is there an organized effort to ensure that the Palestinians aren't getting enough food?
The premise that Hamas is taking and hoarding is a continuation of the rhetoric that Hamas is responsible for everything. That's not true. The United Nations, UNRWA, the United States, USAID, and other Western organizations, unbiased, that have looked into this, have all come to the conclusion that the premise that Hamas was hoarding and taking and not providing to the population is unfounded, not proven. Israel using that rhetoric, they control the entire environment within Gaza. They control the information that goes in and comes out. So they can control the narrative and they can lie, and they do. Can distribution be done in a way that is safe and secure? Absolutely. Israel has already established corridors throughout Gaza for movement where distribution sites can be established from these corridors to provide security for the aid, but also providing it to the population in the areas where there's need. The design to not do that is intentional. It is an intentional genocide. It is a man-made famine. It is man-made human dehumanization and destruction at a level that we have not seen in modern times. It is by design.
Did you witness anyone being shot? Specifically, did you witness Palestinians being shot at or killed?
Every day.
Can you describe one such incident?
There was an incident on the 29th of May on distribution site number 4. I'll share 2 incidents with you because I think they're both important. This instance on site number 4, which is no longer functioning. Distribution site 4 was in central Gaza near the Netzarim corridor. It is now a base for Israeli forces conducting operations in Gaza City. At that distribution site, I witnessed this. It's on video. It's not something that I heard about or that someone told me about and it was talk around the cooler. I saw it. A UG Solutions contractor opened fire into a departing crowd of unarmed combatants, civilians seeking food, who had food from the site and were departing. They were walking back south to Berish. Berish is the city that butts right up against site number 4 near the Netzarim corridor. And as these individuals were walking back, the IDF had opened fire from the coaxial machine gun of the Merkava tank that was stationed near our site. These sites were all built right next to Israeli combat positions, intentionally. This contractor opened fire with his assault rifle, firing an entire magazine of ammunition into the crowd, at the crowd. He then celebrates and cheers with, "Woohoo!" An additional contractor who is on the ground standing next to me responds with, "I think you got one, man," or "Man, I think you got one," referring to an unarmed Palestinian man who dropped to the ground and didn't move. The individual that was shooting then responded back with, "Hell yeah, boy." What I witnessed was an American contractor opening fire and shooting at an unarmed person, killing them, to which Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, UG Solutions, explained it away as, well, he wasn't shooting at them, he was shooting near them, and he was cheering on the IDF. He wasn't cheering on his actions. All of which, any description or justification which is depravity. It's immoral, it's unethical, and it violates international humanitarian law and the Geneva Convention. It is against the law.
And what's the second incident?
On the 28th of May, the day prior, at distribution site number 3, which is in the south. Sites 1, 2, and 3 were in the south of the Marag corridor in what was once Rafah, which now does not exist. At this site, the Palestinians had been moving through the site to receive aid. As was typical at the end of the large crowd were children, women, the disabled, the most vulnerable of the population that need food that got nothing. This young boy named Amir came to me and another contractor. We were both standing away from the crowd, and he approached us with food that he had picked up from the ground. He didn't have a box of food. He didn't have a meal. He didn't have anyone with him. He'd picked up scraps from the ground. And this young boy had no shoes. And this young boy had no parents. His father had been killed in an airstrike. He had been separated from his mother when their home was destroyed, and he was living in Khan Yunis camp. That is a refugee camp that was a refugee camp. It is no longer there. Israel has displaced everyone from these camps. He was taken in by a family that was not his own, but then that took him in. And he and his adoptive uncle were walking to the site to get food on this day, on this morning, on the 28th of May. He was separated from his uncle when the Israelis opened fire on the crowd at the release point for them to come to the site to get food. He was there alone, picking up scraps of food, a young child with no home and no family, no shoes. God knows when's the last time he ate a meal. And he came up, he approached us, and he was thankful. He kissed the hand of the contractor standing next to me. He spoke to me, spoke to both of us, kissed my hand, and thanked us. And the look in his face was a look of vulnerability and need, a look of, what do I do? But he was thankful that someone cared. And as this young boy left the site with the other Palestinians, particularly to site number 3, and this has been captured in a lot of video, and the IDF have even admitted to shooting at the civilians at this particular point. Site number 3's exit connects to the Marag corridor, which is a forced route that the Palestinians must take to move back to the encampments. At this intersection is stationed an Israeli Merkava tank. This tank, with its coaxial machine gun, fires into the intersection to crowd control, to keep the Palestinians moving to the west and not near their location. They use lethal ammunition and firing from machine guns to control the crowd. They've admitted to this. On this particular day, as the crowd was leaving, the UG Solutions contractors started to use stun grenades and tear gas to move the crowd off the site, which invokes panic. And this group of Palestinians was running away, and they were gunned down by this machine gun. Amongst them was Amir. And he, like many others, are buried in that ground around these sites, because after every distribution that we did, almost as a standard operating procedure on behalf of the IDF, they would then bulldoze the area. What they claimed was resurfacing the routes, because they were sand. So when you have thousands of people that are walking through the sand, it makes it very difficult to walk. So the IDF said that we're just resurfacing the routes. They were burying bodies.
So was Amir's death a tipping point for you? Is this the moment you go to UG Solutions and GHF and ask what's happening and how can we do better?
So actually the day before that, on the 27th, on our first day of distribution, when distribution site 1 in southern Rafah was overrun with 34,000 Palestinians starving, and we provided not enough food, not nearly enough food, and we provided no water, and we still provide no water. I brought it to the attention of the leadership that day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. And what I thought to be incompetence and inexperience, and that my presence there with my experience and my competence could lend to fixing this. What the breaking point for me was that it became clear to me that everything that had happened up until that point was by design. The failure of security, the failure to control, the luring of unarmed combatants to get food who are starving, who are then shot at, who are then further dehumanized by having to pick up scraps of food from the ground or beg for food. Or another part of it that I became aware of was that at these distribution sites in the south, that once Palestinians cross the Morag corridor, sites 1, 2, and 3 were all south of the Morag corridor, they don't get to go home. So if they came from their home in Khan Yunis, and let's say the able-bodied male of the family who could make the journey, who could come back with food, well, his family will never see him again. So then what happens is the family is then concerned about what happened, so they go looking for him, and then they never go home. It is a plan. It is deliberate. It is by design. It is evil.
You spent 41 days in Gaza before you resigned. There is a little bit of back and forth. GHF and UG Solutions says that you were fired for inappropriate behavior. You threatened the company, you forged documents, and presented misleading videos to promote a false narrative.
If you listen to the narrative and the rhetoric of the spokespersons from GHF and SRS and UGS, they are just puppets of the IDF and the Israeli government. They peddle the same words, the same propaganda. They use all the same phrases.
All right, thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you. Just Say No. All right, thank you for joining me on Just Say No and the Electronic Intifada. Have a good evening. Thank you.
He's all of 31 and he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years. He's a Catholic.